knows, or she assumes that the body is gone, that Jesus' body has been removed. And we talk about the possible reasons behind that. Well, let's go back now once again and dig some more into this great story. So let's go back to the beginning. Look at verse 1 now of chapter 20. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes. All right, so now let's pick up as we continue this section of chapter 20 with verse 4. So upon hearing this from Mary, there in verse 4, Peter and John take off running to the tomb. And we are specifically told by the disciple that did it, okay? Specifically told by John that even though they start running out together, John ends up outrunning or running ahead of Peter and getting to the tomb first. Now, I know this doesn't matter much, but I want to share it anyway, because there was always a question, why is John able to beat Peter there? A number of guesses as to why. Some say that it's because John is just in better shape than Peter is, but, I believe they're both fishermen, so they've both got to be in pretty good shape. Others will tell you that's because John was just much younger than Peter. And as a man that's gotten older, I can tell you it's very easy for a younger man to outrun me today. But the reason why I want to bring this up because of this one reason that is shared by the Dr. George R. Beasley Murray. Now, he's one of the head writers, editors of what's known as the Word Biblical Commentary, my third book that I've been using on John. Now, he says the reason why John beats Peter was this. He writes, the evangelist may well have wished to hint, saying John might have been giving us a hint that this was not simply because the beloved disciple was a faster runner than Peter, He's giving us a hint, not that he's just faster. He says this, he who was especially loved by the Lord loved him especially also. And this love made him, John, more fleet of foot. So basically it was his love. His love for Jesus that made him run faster than Peter did. But the argument somebody makes is, but who loved Jesus more than Peter did as well? So, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Never thought about the fact that it was because of his love for Jesus and Jesus' love for him that made him run like this. But anyway, as we pick up now, look at the next section, verses 5 through 9. And as we read, of course, we know John gets there first, but he doesn't go in. He just stands there and looks in. Peter, being Peter, does what? He doesn't stop. He goes, Peter being Peter, typical fashion, goes right into the tomb. Then John goes in. Now, as a result of all this, we can see three things that are happening. First, they both see the linen wrappings that had been around Jesus' body, now just lying there, in the place where his body had been, along with the cloth. Some of your versions may have the napkin, the napkin that had been placed on Jesus' head, been put in place by itself away from the linen wrappings. So first off, they see all this. Now, the second thing we want to notice is actually the third thing. Second thing I want to look at is the third thing that happens. Look at verse 9, Now, what is going on in verse 9? They are still, at this point, what? Peter and John still don't what?
They don't understand the Scripture.
They still don't understand yet, okay? And what is it, like Ms. Carol said, they don't understand? They don't understand the Scriptures. They still haven't figured out the prophecy. But apparently, they still don't understand something else. They don't understand at this point all the things that Jesus has told them. Remember, Jesus has told them, talked to them all about this himself as to what would happen to him. So their big problem is not the fact that they don't understand the Scriptures, not necessarily the fact that they don't remember or don't understand everything that Jesus has said. They got the same problem that so many people back in that time had. They're still looking at Jesus from what side of the empty tomb? Remember we talked about this before? It's from the wrong side. They're still looking at the death side of the empty tomb. The reason why they still have trouble understanding is they're looking from the wrong side. But now the second, or which should be the third thing actually, that I want to look at, go back to verse 8. Now even though they still don't understand what the Scripture said all along, John still tells us what specific thing? That the beloved disciple still does what? Even though he doesn't understand, he still does what in verse 8? Okay, he sees, he saw, and he does what? Believes. Okay, he sees and he believes. Now from this, two questions come up. Okay, first off, what was it that John saw that actually helped him to believe? What was it about seeing the linen wrappings and the headcloth just lying there that causes him to believe? Okay, he doesn't understand the Scriptures, but he still sees and believes. Now, the best answer to the question can possibly best be found in this. Now, remember, go back to Mary. When she has seen the stone rolled away, she immediately believes this body has been taken away by what two groups? Do you remember? She talked about that was the big problem back in that day. Well, the grave robbers, the tomb raiders, and grave robbers, okay? But she was also afraid it might have been the what other group? Do you remember from last week? What religious group? The Jewish leaders, the Pharisees. Maybe they were wanting to humiliate Jesus even more. Well, the best answer as to what we can figure out, help him to see and believe, is the fact that, first off, if it had been grave robbers, okay? If it had been grave robbers who had taken Jesus' body, then they most likely would have done what? In taking his body, they would have also taken the what? The wrappings. They would have taken the cloth with them. Because remember, the truth is, what we got to understand, they would have been interested really in the body. They would have been more interested in the things left behind. They would, families would leave keepsakes, and sometimes it could be jewelry, sometimes gold pots and stuff like that. Not necessarily interested in the body. So if it was grave robbers who's taken, done this, first off, they would have also taken the wrappings, because the linen wrappings are expensive. And so they want to have them to make money. But most importantly, let's say they are stealing Jesus' body. Then they're also not going to take the time to do what?
Fold the head rag.
Huh?
Fold the head.
Okay, first off, they're going to take time to fold them. But before even fold them, they're not going to take the time to do what? To unwrap them. They're going to be in a hurry. They're not going to unwrap him. They're not even going to take the time to cut him out. Because they're going to want the wrappings, okay? So the thing is, we most likely is seeing this and knowing that it's not grave robbers. But now, go to the second group that Mary could have. Remember, this is just kind of speculation, but it's a good thing to look at. Let's say it had been the Jewish religious leaders. Then they most likely also, if they're going to take Jesus' body, they're also going to take the wrappings with them, because they wouldn't want somebody or anyone to come in there and believe that Jesus had done what? Well, he rose from the dead, but what could have made them believe that? That Jesus had actually done what? Not just rose from the dead. They don't want people to believe that, but they also don't want people to think that he was, what, able to even unwrap himself. They would have taken the wrappings too, because they would have taken all the evidence with them, okay? So the thing is, the question then becomes, so what exactly does John believe that he sees and believes? Well, he himself admits that yes, both he and Peter still don't completely understand, along with what Jesus personally told him. So does he believe? Does he believe that Jesus has been raised from the dead, even though he still doesn't understand the Scriptures? Or does he simply believe that something that he can't explain has actually happened there? Okay? The bottom line about it all for me is this. For me, I choose to believe that John now believes that Jesus has been raised from the dead, okay? That even though he doesn't understand everything at this point, he's still showing an example of what? To just simply to see the linens there, he is still showing a great example of what? Of faith. Very good faith. You know, of what it means to still have faith in Christ and in God. He knew something great had happened. And he makes the choice not to have doubt, not to have fear, but what? Like Jim says, to have faith. And it's because of his faith that John now makes the choice to now see what? He makes the choice to see Jesus' tomb as what? He makes the choice not to see Jesus' tomb as robbed, but as Jesus' tomb as what?
A symbol.
Huh?
A symbol.
A symbol?
Of the resurrection.
Okay.
A symbol.
Huh? This symbol? A symbol. Oh, a symbol. Okay. I was looking for a different word. Very simple word. How about he now sees the tomb as empty? He no longer sees the tomb as something that could have, a place where robbers or religious leaders could have come. He now, because of his faith still in Jesus. Because this is what faith is, right? You may see something, but you still don't understand. You may have read something, but you still don't understand. But you're still willing to do what? To step on faith because you still believe in Jesus. And that's what John is saying here. He sees this, and he makes the choice. He could have easily probably said for himself, and I saw, and I made the choice to believe at that moment that Jesus was alive, that he was raised from the dead, okay? And so we have all this going on. And I'll be honest with you, this is such a well-known story. It's kind of hard to find new stuff, really. So I'm trying to come up with some things or different ways for us to look at this story, such as now at verse 10. Now, finish up this section, and let's look at verse 10. Now, in verse 10, what specific thing does John point out in this verse? You know, he writes, then the disciples returned to their homes. Now, what should stand out in this verse? There's one word that should stand out to us.
Disciples?
Huh? Not disciples.
Home.
Huh? Okay.
Again.
Home, not home, but, huh?
Again.
Not again either. And not home, but what does it say there? Homes. It's plural. Notice that? Have you ever, huh? Not in yours? Well, in the original, it's homes. That they return to their homes, okay? That apparently Peter and John are going to go down and do what? They're going their separate ways. They're going separate ways at this point. And this is significant because it tells us what? That they do not immediately go and tell who? The other disciples. They're going to their homes, okay? They don't need to tell disciples. Now, we're going to learn when we get to verse 19 in this chapter. And by the end of the day, all the disciples are going to be together in this one house with the doors locked. But at this point, apparently, Peter's still trying to do what himself. He's still trying to figure this out.
Yeah, this is probably what caused this thing.
He had to go home. Then he had to go and mull something over in your mind and get it all straight. I do that a lot. I'll be honest with you. I'm one of those, if I hear something, and I'm not very good. You ask me a question. I'm not very good at giving you an answer right off the bat. But I am good at going home, thinking about it, mulling it over, and the more I think about it, the more I'm able to come up with an answer that you deserve with your question, okay?
He got a big, what do you call it, big light bulb thing.
big light bulb thing. But the thing is, okay, but now does this mean though he's still questioning what? His faith?
No, I think he wants to, he was, it goes, okay, now I have to go and, like, understand the other things Jesus said.
So you think he's trying to get his faith straightened out?
Yeah, because now he has a different understanding of what Jesus said.
All right, so he has a different, okay, I can go with that. I like that, because he has a different understanding. He has to figure this out. He's got to get his faith maybe straightened out and trying to understand and figure out what all is going on. But let's say about John, though. Where do you think John would have gone? If he goes to his house, what would John's reason have been for going to his house straight away? Okay, to write it down. Now, the truth is, he doesn't write this stuff yet, not until like 70 years later, okay? But who's at his house now? Mary, Jesus' mother. He's probably running to his house because he now wants to tell Mary, Jesus' mother, what he and Peter have now seen. So, for them to do this, to have to figure it out, and for him to make sure Mary knows before the other disciples is something very different that goes on within this. All right, well now let's pick up with the next section, looking at verses 11 through 18. And join me there at verse 11. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, Woman, why are you weeping? She said to them, They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for? Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned and said to him in Hebrew, or more like it's mostly Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Jesus said to her, Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord, and she told them that she had seen these things, that he had said these things to her. Okay, now, as we go into the next section, as we read this part of the story, it's always been pointed out that at this point, as the story unfolds, Mary is now being given the very distinct honor of being the first person to now do what? To see Jesus. Mary Magdalene, the woman who was, possibly believed to have been a prostitute, 7 demons, there's all kinds of story about Mary Magdalene. Here, this woman has been given the honor, of being the first person to see Jesus alive. But the thing is, just got to understand that to have the honor of being the first person to see Jesus alive, that is not the real reason why Mary is there so early in the morning. So what do you think was the real reason that Mary came so early in the morning? It was because of her what?
She didn't want to be harassed.
Well, because she didn't want to be harassed, okay. But what would be a greater reason? I mean, that's a good reason. I can't argue with that one. But because of her what? Okay, because of her status, possibly. That's another good point. That because of who she had been, okay? Even though Jesus has forgiven her, it's tough for other people to do that, okay? I hadn't thought about that. I like that. She didn't want to be harassed, didn't want to be, because of her status as who she had been, even though Jesus has now forgiven her. But what about a very simple human emotion? Well, not a simple human. What about a great human emotion? What do you think could have been the true reason why Mary was there so early in the morning? Because of her what for Jesus? Her love. These others are very good points. I like those. I hadn't thought about those. But the thing is, most importantly, simply because of her love for Jesus. The glory and honor that Mary receives from being the first person to see him alive is only because of her love for him. Now, as we get into this, okay, We're not certain as to how the events of this part of the story actually come about. Now we know from verses 1 and 2, Mary has seen the stone rolled away. She has come to believe the body isn't there. She runs to tell Peter and John what happened. But then it's unclear as what happens next. The question has been, was she left behind by Peter and John as the two of them ran on ahead to see what has happened from what she's reported? And since she's not mentioned again in verses 3 through 10, does this mean that by the time she made it back to the tomb that Peter and John have already left? They've already come, seen what they see, and headed back to their homes. We don't know exactly what all transpired within all this. But what we do know, like I said, first off, she is the first one to ever see Jesus. But let's look a little deeper in this. Look at verses 11 and 12. Now, as we look at 11 and 12, we read that Mary now stands outside the tomb weeping, okay? Now, what's the real reason that she's standing there weeping? She's not standing there weeping because Jesus is dead. This has already happened, 3 days ago. Why is she standing there weeping at this point?
Somebody stole the body.
Okay, she believes somebody has stolen the body at this point, okay? That they've taken his body. Now, this is important, okay? This is important because at this point, other than her love for Jesus, okay? At this point, Mary has one concern, one thought in her heart and in her mind. And that's to do what? Huh? Okay, all right, I thought about that, but I'll give you that one. All right, I got to go with that. That is to find him. But there's also something even with that. She wants to find him for what specific reason? Come on, you do it. Very good, okay, very good. Because, she wants to finish preparing his body. Remember when Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, they have the spices and stuff, but the Sabbath is fast approaching. They kind of just get the basic stuff done, seal the tomb, and they leave. Mary comes because, first off, she's wanting to prepare Jesus' body. But more importantly, she's wanting to do something else. There's something else most likely there. You see, she wanted to complete this. She wanted to complete what she truly believes would be her final act of devotion and respect to the one who has changed her life. As far as she's concerned, as far as she knows, he's dead. The body has been taken away. Jesus has changed her life. This is her last chance. Her last chance because of her status, because who she is. She's not going to be allowed in another place. She has to be there early, okay? She's going to be harassed. This is her chance to do something for Jesus before she's not allowed to see his body ever again. And so she's wanting to do this. That's why she needs to find him. That's why she wants to do all this. And so in being what we believe to be the first time, it is possible she did look, but John doesn't tell us that. He leads us to believe that Mary doesn't look in verses 1 and 2. Mary now looks inside, and as she looks, what is it that Mary sees? All right, the two angels. But to truly understand, the bigger question is, what does Mary not see? Huh? Okay, she doesn't see Jesus. But go with the story here. You're right. I can't deny that. She does see Jesus. She sees the two angels. But what else does she not see? What have we just talked about? What's the other big thing that she doesn't see? What's laying there?
The wrappings.
The wrappings. She knows she doesn't see the grave clothes, the linen wrappings on the cloth that was around his head. Why? Because the angels have now done what? They're now sitting where?
At the head of the...
At the head and at the feet. Where were the wrappings originally? At the head and at the feet. They've taken the place of the wrappings. Or either they're sitting on top of them, and I can give them that. So one of them, either they're sitting on top of them, or they're gone, and the angels are there. They're sitting in the place where, and I'm going to share with you in just a minute why this is important. Why this is important that Mary sees this, okay? And John records it for us. Because the appearance, okay, the appearance of an angel or angels at the tomb actually occurs in all four of the Gospels, okay? Now, if you want to turn back with me, you can. You don't have to. I'm going to read them out loud. But the first one is in Matthew. Matthew 28, verses 2 and 3. Now, if you want to follow along, go turn back, you can. But not just listen. Because I'm going to ask you a question about all four of these when I finish reading, okay? Now, the first one's in Matthew 28, verses 2 and 3. Matthew writes, "And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow." All right. Now in Mark chapter 16, verse 5, Mark writes, "As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe." Okay? In Luke chapter 24, there verses 4 and 5, while they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. And then in John, now in John chapter 20, verse 12, once again, "And she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet." All right, now, what is the one thing that all four of the appearance of the angels are, when we're told, when Mark says, the young men, or is it Luke that says the young men? It still means angels. What is the one thing, that all these appearances by the angels, young men, what do they all have in common? White. White. They're all, in each case, they're all dressed in bright, shining, white garments or robes, okay? Now, this is important because the appearance of angels wearing bright, white, shining garments has always been, especially in this time for the Jewish people, this was a symbol of what they would call the heavenly world, okay? A symbol of the heavenly world. And when angels are described in this way, an angel appearing in white, okay, or shining with a shining light or anything like that, okay? When angels are described in this way, it means that the powers of heaven are at work in that situation at that very moment, okay? But more importantly, it's not just about the power of heaven. It also means that who has been at work? God. If you think of heaven, you've got to think of God. It also means God, has become involved. Because how do the angels get there? Who sends them? God does. God sends them. He sends His workers to get involved. And so, as she sees these two angels taking a position, one at the place where Jesus' feet were, where the linen wrapping was, the other sitting at the head, where the headcloth, the napkin was, okay? It suddenly now becomes a wonderful testimony to not just what Mary sees, but from this point, everyone. When she goes back, she's going to tell the disciples this. They're going to tell others, not just everyone who hears this, but everyone like us, who ends up reading this resurrection story. It then tells us what specific fact. That it was not grave robbers who took Jesus. It was not the Jewish leaders who took Jesus. Who took Jesus' body?
No one.
Now, who's just involved in all this? Angels represent the heavens. Angels represent God. So who took Jesus' body? God did. I mean, remember, Jesus says, "No one takes my, life from me." He willingly did. He was a part of it, okay? But what we can understand is, nobody came in there and took it. God did. When He calls him forward, God is the one at work in this. And this is why it's important that Mary sees them instead of the grave clothes. Because once again, it's another reminder. It's a symbol. It lets them know, and it lets us know, God is the one who's involved. God is the one at work. God is the one that has put all this together, okay? So why don't we stop here? It's been 30 minutes now, so we'll stop at this point, and we'll pick up with verse 13. Once again, it's a great story. It's a well-known story, and I'm trying to come up with some things that maybe we haven't noticed before. So I'm hoping that you're getting a blessing out of all this and getting something new. I want to thank all of you who are here. I want to thank all of you who are at home right now. In a moment, we're going to be turning the camera off. And those of you who are at home, I invite you to take a few minutes and pray. Those of you who get our phone messages from the church, I've given you a list of names and others that we need to be praying for. I invite you to join us who are here. Take a few minutes to bow your heads and just pray with us as we're going through the prayer list here together. So again, thank you for being here with us. I hope you'll join us this Sunday at 10:45 for worship. And until we're together again, take care and God bless. Goodbye.